Our reliable belief in the goodness of America has been turned into a sadistic tool for corporate greed and government intimidation. Don't believe me?
Your name is Tom. You live just off of Fifth Street. Nice car, Tom. Nice house. What's not so nice is you owe Pennsylvania $4,212 in back taxes. Listen, Tom, we can make this easy. Pay online by June 18th, and we'll skip your penalty and take half off your interest. Because, Tom, we do know who you are.
Is that right? Maybe it's more like, you better not let us see you first. Our ability to survey and assess the landscape, much less the battlefield that this economy actually represents, has been sabotaged by the media. Inasmuch as the C4ISR multidimensional battlefield virtual environment is used to defeat military enemies, what happens when its GPS longitude and latitude satellite-driven systems are turned over to corporations? Like it was on 9/11. When the C4ISR code keys were handed over to the Global Guardians in the City of London.
I was lying on I was lying on the table at a natural practitioner's office, and she was explaining to me how a tapeworm works in your body. What a tapeworm does, it injects into you a chemical that makes you crave what's good for the tapeworm. So, you know, you are the one who feeds yourself whatever it is the tapeworm wants. And so you go through this process where you feed the tapeworm, and the tapeworm grows stronger and stronger and stronger, and you grow weaker and weaker and weaker. And that's a very beautiful description of sort of our relationship with, you know, what Eisenhower called the military-industrial complex and the financial sector, which has grown like a big fat tapeworm over the last, particularly the last 15 years. But anyway, so I was listening to her, and I said, you know, I need to use that phrase. So I started to talk about the tapeworm economy. Because if you look at the tapeworm economy, the media feeds us information about what's good for the tapeworm and bad for us. So, you know, we watch TV or we listen to the TV news, and we're encouraged to do things that make money for big corporations, but in ways that reduce either our physical equity or our financial equity. So they get richer and we get poorer. And so we have this dynamic where we're the host and we're feeding the tapeworm. And the more we feed the tapeworm, the more powerful it gets, and the more we lose. So if you go back to the 3 women in Tennessee, they're getting poorer and poorer because they're making less on their investments, or they're paying more for what they're borrowing. And meantime, the tapeworm in the middle is getting richer and richer and richer. So a tapeworm economy is an economy where a few insiders can constantly drain subsidy from the outsiders in a way that preserves their wealth, but it shrinks total wealth because the host is getting weaker and weaker and weaker. Since the beginning of the Republic, so from the Revolutionary War till about 18 months to 2 years ago, if you look at all the debt we'd issued to finance everything, so finance the Civil War, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, all the infrastructures, the building of the highways, all the bridges, the space program, all that, all the government programs, the GI Bill. So you look at all the debt we've issued to finance everything since the beginning of the Republic, that amount of money was $12 trillion. And then in 18 months, we gave or lent from the Treasury and the central bank an equivalent amount, another $12 trillion to the banks. Now, what was that about? That $12 trillion refinanced out literally $12 trillion of paper, toxic paper, and derivatives that the financial sector issued during the 1990s, the last 15 years, literally to finance a leveraged buyout of the country and the planet. So think of it this way. I want to take you over. I issue everybody else $12 trillion of funny money. I take you over, and then I use your $12 trillion to pay them back. Mm-hmm. Okay? So literally, we're watching a leveraged buyout of a country, and that's why I call it a financial coup d'etat. And that's what the bailouts were. One of the things that caused this tremendous ballooning of the power and economic resources of the financial sector was in the early 90s we passed the Uruguay round for GATT, for the General Agreement on Tariffs, Trade and Tariffs. As a result, we changed the rules of how capital can flow around the world. And so suddenly, it's sort of Ross Perot's giant sucking sound. You pull tremendous amounts of capital out of this country, and you shift them abroad into other areas around the world. And one of the things, in fact, that happened, we do a lot to pull liquidity on those other areas so that you can buy in cheap. So you pump up the United States economy at the same time you flatten the economy in Asia or in Latin America so you can buy in, so you take this money at a high price and buy in cheap at a low price. Okay, so they're shifting massive amounts of capital, and as they shift that capital, they totally change who's the owner. Okay, so when it leaves this country, $5 trillion of that money is in the United States government, so it's shared, it's in the commons, if you will. By the time it gets to Asia, the ownership is in the hands of small numbers of people. So you see this enormous capital shift. And one of the other things that happens as that capital shift occurs is we're watching the end of sovereign governments and the rise of corporations. We're literally changing the governance structure on planet Earth so that we're no longer governed by countries that coordinate with each other. We're literally governed by private corporations. In this process, and part of it is privatization, you're watching liabilities being shifted into sovereign governments and assets being shifted to corporations. Okay? So the corporations are getting the assets and the governments are getting the liabilities. So let's go back to the bailout. One of the ways to look at this is when we did that capital shift, we said in the beginning of the 90s, we can't afford the retirement of the boomers. We've promised them in Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid more than we can afford to pay. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull all their retirement savings out. We're going to basically shift out all the money that's in the pension funds, the equivalent, okay? And what we're going to put back in their pension funds is phony baloney paper. And we're going to shift out the money that's in the Social Security fund and shift in phony baloney paper. So that once we've gotten all the money out, they're going to be sitting with a bunch of phony baloney paper and promises to each other. Okay? So it's really a way of leaving the American middle class high and dry and getting out while the getting is good.
June 22 is the date of this email. Boy, that Timberwolf was one shitty deal. How much of that shitty deal did you sell to your clients after June 22, 2007?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know the answer to that, but the price would have reflected levels that they wanted to invest in.
Oh, of course.
At that time.
But they don't know it's a... You didn't tell them you thought it was a shitty deal.
Well, I didn't say that.
No. Who did? Your people, internally. You knew it was a shitty deal, and that's what your email shows.
I think the context, the message that I took from the email from Mr. Montag was that my performance on that deal wasn't good. And I think the fact that we had lost money related to that wasn't good.
How about the fact that you sold hundreds of millions of that deal after your people knew it was a shitty deal? Does that bother you at all? You sold to customers something?
I don't recall selling hundreds of millions of that deal after that.
All right. Let's take a look. Exhibit 166, series of emails. First is June 26, 07. That's after June 22. July 1, 2007, tells the sales force the top priority is Timberwolf. Your top priority to sell is that shitty deal.
Mr. Chairman, my comment was I didn't recall the sales.
You got it?
That we were trying to sell.
Okay, you're trying to sell a shitty deal, and it's your top priority. Come on, Mr. Sparks.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
should Goldman Sachs be trying to sell, and by the way, it sold it, a lot of it, after that date. Should Goldman Sachs be trying to sell a shitty deal?
Well,
can you answer
again,
that one? Can you answer that one, yes or no?
There are prices in the
guys
market.
at Goldman Sachs, and I'm picking on them, they haven't competed based on merit their entire life. They don't know what that is, and they don't know that they don't know.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's, you know, that's a real big problem. Okay. The way we've run our economy is we've rigged return to the investors through the government to be positive at the expense of the whole. So we have a positive return to Goldman Sachs, a negative return to the network, and the total is negative. We're shrinking the pie. Goldman and their investors are getting richer, but the pie is shrinking. Okay? Now, it's hopeless if you don't change. In other words, if the tapeworm keeps draining the body will die. However, it's really simple. To me, the host dying is not a good plan. Why don't we simply eject the parasite? Why don't we say, okay, Wall Street, we invite you to grow up and manage your business so it improves the total economic return.
The 9000 series has a perfect operational record. This sort of thing has cropped up before, and it has always been due to human error.
Let me step back in time. Edwin Black wrote a magnificent book on the Holocaust about IBM helping the Nazis build the database operation they needed to implement the Holocaust. Okay, now, who's just been chosen as one of the lead contractors on our census? IBM, okay? And Lockheed Martin, I believe. So if you look at all the databases they have from around the country already, and you combine those databases with the data that could come from the healthcare bill on everybody's personal health information and their accurate address, what have you got? You've got the basis, you have the equivalent in 2010 of what the Nazis had to do the Holocaust. God forbid you should combine that with a national ID card.
The main reform came at the same time as the World Trade Organization was created in 1995 with the conclusion of the Uruguay round. More reforms and new challenges lie ahead. An immediate task is to conclude the current negotiations, the Doha Development Agenda.
The most dangerous part of GATT is the creation of a corporate right to create patents on life. So to create terminator seed and control the seed and food supply. What GATT is doing, particularly if this new round, the Doha round, goes into implementation, is basically shifting 2 to 3 billion people off the land as small farmers and either killing them or into the cities in a process that will ultimately control the seed and food supply as that seed and food supply is being genetically manipulated. And when you take 50% of a planetary population and move it from something where it's eating healthy food on a self-sufficient basis into a dependent role where it's dependent on corporations for food that is not healthy, then you're talking about a kind of planetary slavery which is more horrible than anything we've ever envisioned.
I know your anger, I know your dream.